I saw her again tonight. Not by plan, just by the rhythm of the neighborhood. The street was quiet except for the hum of streetlights and the muffled bark of someone's dog 3 houses down. I was coming back from the corner store with a plastic bag of instant noodles and a bottle of cheap cold coffee when I noticed her porch light still on. She was standing outside, arms folded loosely, like she wasn't sure if she'd been waiting for something or had just stepped out for air. The porch light made her hair glow faint gold. Couldn't sleep. I asked before I thought better of it. She looked over, smiled a little. You're one to talk, it's past midnight. Her name's Mara. She lives next door. Teaches art at the community center. I'd seen her around enough times to know her schedule by accident. When she left, when her car pulled in, when the lights upstairs went out, we'd exchanged maybe 10 sentences total since I moved in last spring. She always spoke like she was balancing politeness and something else she didn't want to say. I shifted the bag in my hand. Late dinner, I said, holding it up as if to prove it. Gourmet, she said, glancing at the noodles. I smiled. You'd be surprised what counts as gourmet at my place. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, exactly. Just the kind that feels like both people are thinking about how long it should last. She rubbed her arm absently, eyes flicking toward the dark windows of her house. You're always up late, she said. Do you study, or try to? I said. Mostly just sit there pretending I'm about to. That got a small laugh out of her. Quick, unguarded. Then she caught herself and looked down, like laughter was something she'd stopped allowing after a certain hour. I wanted to ask her something else, anything, to keep her there. But I didn't. She turned toward her door. Good night, Etten, she said. Night. And that should have been it. But she didn't go inside right away. She lingered, hand on the doorknob, and glanced back. Her smile held for a second too long. Long enough that I noticed the tiny hesitation before she broke eye contact. After she went in, I stood on my own porch a little longer than I needed to, listening to the faint sound of her kettle start up next door. I could see her shadow move behind the curtains, slow, deliberate. When I finally went inside, the air felt colder. I set the noodles on the counter, but didn't bother cooking them. The silence in my apartment was thick, like something waiting to be said. My phone buzzed once, a notification that wasn't from anyone I wanted. I sat down on the couch, opened a blank text thread with her name, Mara N. Still saved from the one time she'd given me her number. In case the plumbing acts up. My thumb hovered over the screen. Couldn't sleep either, I typed, then erased it. I tried again. You okay? You looked. The cursor blinked for a while. Then I locked the phone, dropped it on the table, and leaned back. Outside, a light went off in her kitchen. But a minute later, the porch light came back on, and through the window, I caught a faint glow. Her silhouette crossing to the door again, pausing. Maybe checking if the night was still there. Maybe checking if I was. Either way, I didn't move. I just sat there in the half-dark, my coffee warming in my hand, waiting for nothing in particular. Except maybe for her smile to mean more than it should have at midnight. The next morning, I found her kneeling by her mailbox, wrestling with a stack of envelopes that had fallen into the wet grass. She looked different in daylight. Smaller somehow. Softer. A loose sweatshirt, hair tied up without care, faint shadows under her eyes. I crossed the short stretch of lawn before I could talk myself out of it. Morning, I said, picking up one of the letters. You're under attack. She smiled. That same almost laugh from last night. Bills, they always win. I handed her the mail. She took it, fingers brushing mine, not a deliberate touch but not an accidental one either. The air caught for a beat. Coffee, she said suddenly. I made too much. Inside her kitchen, the kettle whistled faintly and something floral was steeping in a teapot on the counter. Her house smelled like lemon soap and faint paint. A trace of her art classes, I guessed. She poured 2 mugs, no questions asked, just assumed I took mine black. I didn't crave alone, she asked, leaning against the counter. Yeah, you, she hesitated. Used to be different. Her tone made me wish I hadn't asked. Then she added, divorced, 10 years now. My son's about your age, actually. Lives up north. She said it simply, like she was describing the weather, but her eyes didn't quite meet mine. I nodded, unsure what to say. He visit often. Not much these days. A pause. He's busy. Life moves away from you when you're not looking. The quiet stretched again. Not uncomfortable, just heavy. I noticed the faint tremor in her hand as she lifted her mug, the small wrinkle of thought between her brows. I said, "You still paint?" Her head lifted, surprised I knew. "Sometimes. Mostly when I can't sleep. Last night." She smiled faintly. "Maybe." The kettle clicked off. The only sound after that was the slow tick of the wall clock. Steady and small. I wanted to tell her that she looked different in morning light. That the gray at her temples suited her. That I'd thought about her porch light all night. How it had come back on after I went inside. Instead, I said, "Your tea's good." She laughed quietly. "You're terrible at small talk. I'm better at bad timing." That got a real laugh, quick, unguarded again. And for a second, I saw what she must have looked like before years had started weighing on her. When I got up to leave, she walked me to the door. "Thanks for the company," she said, resting her hand briefly on my arm. It was light, nothing anyone else would notice, but it landed somewhere deep. I nodded. "Anytime." She tilted her head slightly, studying me the way someone studies a half-finished painting. "Be careful offering that." Later, back in my apartment, I replayed the moment. Her fingers against my sleeve, her laugh still echoing. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. Even if neither of us should have. It started changing in small ways. I began to notice when her curtains were drawn later than usual. When the smell of paint drifted from her windows, faint and citrusy. When her car stayed parked all day, like she'd decided the world could wait. I told myself I wasn't keeping track, but I was. One evening, I found her outside again. Only this time, she looked different. Not guarded, just tired. She had a smudge of charcoal across her cheek, like she'd forgotten about it. "Long day?" I asked. She looked at me, then away, something like that. A gust of wind pushed between us. She folded her arms, hugging herself, but didn't go inside. I offered the thermos in my hand, coffee, still warm. She hesitated, then took it. Her fingers brushed mine again, deliberate this time. "I shouldn't," she said softly, but she still took a sip. The silence that followed wasn't simple anymore. It carried everything we hadn't said. The way her eyes lingered, the way I caught myself memorizing her gestures. She handed the thermos back, eyes steady. "You're too young to drink bitter coffee like that." I smiled. "And you're too nice to drink it anyway." Her lips curved, then fell. "You should be out with people your age," she said. "Not here. I like it here." "I too fast, too honest." She blinked, looked down. "Yvonne." The way she said my name, quiet, weighted, made my chest feel smaller. Before I could respond, a voice called from across the street, "Mrs. Hale." We both turned. It was one of her colleagues. The woman from the art center, the one who always waved too eagerly. She was holding a folder, walking toward us. Mara's hand dropped from the thermos like it had burned her. Her tone changed instantly. "You're here for the flyers." I stepped back, pretending to check my phone. The distance between us suddenly felt official, like a wall we'd accidentally built too close to climb back over. Her colleague glanced at me. "Evening." "Hey," I muttered, already turning toward my gate. I heard Mara's voice behind me. Lighter now, practiced. The sound of someone remembering which part of herself she's allowed to show. By the time I reached my porch, their laughter carried faintly through the air. A polite, surface-level kind of laughter. I waited until her friend left. The porch light clicked off. Then, a moment later, clicked back on. She stepped out again, hugging her sweater. Our eyes met across the fence. A distance that suddenly felt deliberate. "I didn't mean to." I started. She shook her head. "You didn't do anything wrong." But her voice wavered, as if she wasn't sure. She came closer, until only the fence separated us. The night was so quiet I could hear her breathing. "You should get some sleep," she whispered. "So should you," I said. We both didn't move. The air between us held, fragile, electric. She reached out, fingers brushing one of the wooden slats, then stopped, like the rest of that gesture would cost too much. For a second, I thought she might reach over, or I might. But she stepped back. "Good night, Evan." I nodded, but it came out like a breath. When I went inside, my hands were still shaking. Not from what happened, but but from what almost did. It had been a week since that night by the fence. A week of polite nods, missed eye contact, and overthought silences. Every time I saw her car in the driveway, I'd walk slower. Every time I didn't, I caught myself wondering where she'd gone, and why it bothered me so much. Saturday afternoon, I found her sitting on the low stone wall between our houses, a book closed on her lap. She didn't look up when I passed, just said quietly, "You're avoiding me." I stopped. "You're hard to avoid, you're right there." That got a small smile, but her eyes stayed on the ground. "That's not what I meant." The air was warm, the kind that makes shadows softer. I sat down beside her, not too close. She didn't move away. For a while, we just listened to the neighborhood. The faint thrum of a lawnmower down the street, wind through the leaves. Her hand traced circles along the book's edge. "You know," she said finally, "I keep thinking about that night." "Me too," I said before I could stop myself. She exhaled a sound that wasn't quite a sigh. "I shouldn't have asked you in for coffee. You didn't do anything wrong." She laughed, short and brittle. "That's what makes it worse. Nothing happened, and I still can't stop thinking about it." Something in my chest went tight. Then maybe something did happen. She turned then, slowly, fully. Her gaze landed on me with that same stillness from the first night, like I was a painting she couldn't decide to finish or erase. "Don't," she said softly. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I don't know what I'd do if you meant them." I wanted to tell her that I did mean them, that I'd meant them since the first time she smiled at me over the fence. But I didn't. Instead, I said, "You ever get tired of pretending you don't care?" Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Then she looked away, blinking hard, like she was trying to keep something in. "My son called last night," she said suddenly. "His visiting next week." "Oh, I told him about you," she added quickly, then stopped. "Not like that. Just that you live next door, that you're polite." Polite. That word felt like a door closing quietly. "I should probably give you space while he's here," I said. She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "Maybe that's for the best." A pause. The wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of her shampoo, lavender clean. "I'm not good at this," she said. "Whatever this is." I looked at her, really looked. The tired eyes, the guarded posture, the tiny tremor in her fingers. "I don't think anyone is," I said. We sat there a long time, both staring at nothing. Then, just as I stood to leave, she said my name. So softly it felt like a secret. When I turned back, she was watching me, eyes wet but steady. "If things were different," she whispered, then stopped. I took one slow step closer. "Would you want them to be?" The question hung there between us, trembling, fragile, unfinished. Neither of us breathed. She disappeared for 3 days. Not gone, exactly. Her car was still there, curtains drawn, the porch light off. But the usual sounds, kettle, soft music, faint laughter from some old show, were gone. The silence next door felt heavier than usual, like the whole house was holding its breath. I told myself not to think about it. I even managed to avoid looking at her windows for most of a day. But by the third night, I caught myself outside, leaning against the fence again. Just standing there, listening to nothing. The next morning she appeared, carrying grocery bags, sunglasses on, hair tucked back, shoulders tight. "Morning," I said. She nodded but didn't stop. "Hi, Evan." Her voice was smaller than usual, no smile, no pause, just movement, quick, efficient, gone. It felt like I imagined everything before. That afternoon, I saw another car in her driveway, a silver one, clean, unfamiliar. A man stepped out, late 40s, maybe early 50s. Confident walk, shirt too crisp. She met him at the door. They hugged. I looked away so fast it made my neck ache. I didn't see them leave, but when the car pulled out an hour later, she waved from the porch. He smiled. She didn't. The next few days blurred. I started staying late at the library, working on things I didn't need to. Every time I passed her house, I felt that quiet flicker. That mix of wanting and resenting that comes when something breaks without ever being named. Then one night, a text buzzed on my phone. "Mara, sorry if I've been distant. Things have been complicated." I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Complicated. It was the kind of word people used when they didn't want to explain. I typed, "Do you want to talk?" then deleted it. Typed again, you don't have to explain anything. Deleted that too. The cursor blinked like it was waiting for me to grow up. I locked the phone, set it face down, and sat in the dark. The kind of dark that feels personal. Hours later, I glanced out the window. Her light was on again. She was sitting by the window, sketchbook open, her head bowed over it. Every few minutes she'd stop, stare into space, then start again. For the first time in days she looked like herself, or at least the version of her I'd come to know. I thought about going over. Knocking, saying something, anything, that might pull us back to that easy quiet from before. But I didn't move. I just sat there, watching her shadow across the glass, tracing invisible lines. I didn't feel heartbroken, I felt paused, like life forgot to finish the sentence. It rained that night. The kind of steady, unhurried rain that makes the world sound smaller. I was halfway through reheating leftovers when I heard it. A faint knock, soft but certain. When I opened the door, she was standing there. No umbrella. Hair damp, sweater clinging to her shoulders. She looked like she'd been walking in the rain for longer than made sense. Your porch light's still on, I said, because I didn't know what else to say. She smiled weakly. I know. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then I stepped aside. Come in. She hesitated at the threshold, like she was testing whether she still had the right to. Then she walked in, careful not to drip on the floor. Sorry, she murmured, brushing water from her sleeves. I didn't mean to show up like this. It's fine, I said, though my heart was beating hard enough to make it sound like a lie. She looked around the small apartment. The half-eaten meal, the stack of books, the couch still dented from where I'd been sitting nights watching her window. You've been quiet, she said. You too, she nodded. I thought distance would help. It didn't. Something in the way she said it, not broken, just tired, made the air between us soften. I offered her a towel. She took it, drying her hands slowly, eyes never lifting from the floor. He came by, she said finally. My ex. He wanted to talk about selling the house. Said it's too big for me alone. Oh, she looked up then. And he's right. It is too big. But every time I think about leaving, she trailed off, shaking her head. It feels like erasing something I'm not ready to erase. The clock ticked once. Twice. I took a step closer. You don't have to explain. I think I do, she said, voice almost breaking. Because I keep pretending I don't know what this is. Or what it's becoming. And it's not fair to you. My breath caught. Mara. She looked at me then, really looked, no mask, no guarded distance, just quiet, raw honesty. I haven't let anyone close in a long time, she said. And I don't know how to want something without feeling guilty for it. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, close enough to feel the warmth coming off her skin. I'm scared, she whispered. Not of you. Of myself, if I let this go any further. Rain pattered harder outside. A car passed, headlights sweeping through the room. I reached out, slow, unsure, and tucked a strand of wet hair behind her ear. My hand lingered there for a heartbeat too long. She closed her eyes, leaned in just slightly, then pulled back. Don't say anything, she said. Please. So I didn't. We stood there, the silence between us louder than any confession. Then she looked up again, eyes soft. Almost smiling. Okay, she said. I nodded. Okay. And for once, it felt like enough. Spring came quietly that year. The kind of spring you almost miss if you're not paying attention. The grass just a little greener, the morning air less sharp. She didn't sell the house. I didn't move away. We never talked about night in the rain, not once. But something shifted after it, not a confession, not a resolution, just ease. Some evenings, I'd find her sitting on the same low wall between our houses, book in her lap, cup of tea beside her. She never said much when I joined her. Just a nod, a small smile, like she'd been expecting me all along. Our conversations became quieter, lighter. Once, when I asked if she was sleeping any better, she said, most nights. And that was enough. Sundays became a kind of ritual. She'd bring her sketchbook, I'd bring coffee. She still teased me for how bitter it was, I still pretended it didn't bother me. Sometimes she painted, sometimes I read, but mostly we just sat. That kind of shared silence that means comfort, not distance. One morning, I noticed the time glowing on her phone. 8:47 a.m. She smiled at it and said, I always start painting at that time, habit. The next Sunday I showed up at exactly 4:07. She didn't say anything, but she poured me tea instead of coffee that day. I didn't hate it. Weeks passed like that, small repetitions becoming a life. Once, her son visited again. I saw him wave at me from the driveway, polite but distant. Later, I heard them laughing through the open kitchen window. It didn't sting this time. It just sounded right. After he left, she stopped by my porch with 2 mugs of tea and said, "He asked if I was happy. What did you tell him?" She smiled. "That I'm learning to be." She handed me the mug. No hesitation this time. Her fingers brushed mine and stayed there. There wasn't much else to say. We sat outside as the light shifted, the street quiet around us, the air carrying the faint smell of rain from somewhere far away. Her head rested lightly against my shoulder, just enough to feel real. I thought of all the pauses that brought us here, the missed words, the almosts, the silences that used to ache but now just breathed. She looked up at me once and said, "You still take your coffee black? Only on the days you're not around." Her laugh, small, unguarded, familiar, settled somewhere deep. For the first time in a long while, nothing felt unfinished. Maybe love doesn't always need a declaration. Maybe sometimes it's just 2 people choosing to stay, quietly, steadily, after everything has been said without words. She reached for my hand, fingers threading through mine like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. And maybe it was.